This right here is the Sony A7IV. I've been using this camera for around 6 months now after switching from Canon. I've got some thoughts about it. It's got some pros, it's got some cons, but this is by far my favourite camera that I've ever used. So let's delve into it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Connor. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I hope you're all safe and well. If we're just meeting, it's nice to meet you. I'm a photographer, videographer and podcast producer, and I make videos around those three things. So if that's something you're into, stick around. So I've been using the Sony A7IV here for around 6 months now on a variety of different projects, whether it's photos or videos. It has been an absolute powerhouse. This is hands down my favorite camera that I've ever used. It is the only body I really shoot with. I've got a spare camera, which is what I'm shooting on now, which is the A7 III, this guy's little brother or sister, and upgrading from the Sony A7 III has just been a huge step up on so many ways. The Sony A7 IV is just, it's an absolute powerhouse. It's my absolute go-to when it comes to filming and doing photo shoots. It is just a perfect all-rounder. So I'm going to go through some of the pros and some of the cons and things maybe I'd love to see in the Sony A7V. So starting off with the body of this camera, I really love the body. The grip feels nice and sturdy. It doesn't ever feel like I'm going to slip and drop it. I've got enough sort of space to get my fingers sort of nice and deep sort of in the groove of that, which is great because when you're shooting, for example, like live music, I shoot a lot of live music, you want to have a solid grip of your camera because you're going to constantly get bumped into when you're in gigs, environments and stuff, and it's great. It feels really sort of sturdy. The build quality is just incredible. The next thing I love about this camera is the selection dial, switching between photo and video. I don't know if you can see that there, but it's got this little dial over here that allows you to select video, photo and S&Q mode. And I love that feature because I can dial in all of my settings with the custom functions on 1, 2 and 3. So I've got them set up for number 1 being 24 frames a second in 4K, the correct frame rate. Number 2 being 4K 60, and then number 3 is 1080p 120. And it is brilliant. It just makes it so easy, particularly when out and about and switching between photo and video and then shooting modes. The next thing I love about this camera, which isn't on the A7 III, is the flip out screen. I love the flip out screen, particularly when you're shooting on your own in a video like this, because obviously I'm filming on the A7 III right now and I've got a monitor up there so I can actually see my framing. When I'm filming with the A7 IV, I can vlog with it, I can see my framing. It's great because when I'm shooting gigs and all sorts of other shoots, I sometimes need to get a little bit low down, and having the ability to sort of shoot like that is a great feature. When you need to shoot like high up, getting like some high up shots, and you can like look like that. It's fantastic. I love the flip out screen. I think all cameras should have a flip out screen on them. If they don't, I think that's a big con for me. The image quality I've gotten from this camera is absolutely impeccable. My go-to setup is this paired with the Sigma 24-70 f2.8. It's what I'm sort of shooting on right now, other than being on the A7 III. And I get really sharp images. 32 megapixels on this. It is fantastically sharp. And the eye autofocus, the animal autofocus on the bird. I've not really tested out the bird. I don't do too much wildlife photography, but when I've been using animal and human eye autofocus, it's just so sharp. It is really sticky when it comes to tracking and following, which is absolutely fantastic. I love that. This camera now shoots 4K 60, 422 10-bit, which is amazing. I love being able to shoot 4K 60. You can't do it on the A7 III, so having really high quality slow motion footage is an absolute game changer for me, and I use that so much when it comes to my shoots. I've touched on it a little bit with photos, but the autofocus is super responsive in video as well. You can just tap on someone's face and it will autofocus on them. I love that feature. I never really worry about myself being out of focus. Sometimes with the A7 III, if I just hold something up, it will kind of, yeah, as you can see there, it will sort of lose the face autofocus, whereas with this, I never need to sort of, when I'm out vlogging, I never really need to look into the viewfinder to check that I'm in focus. I'll sometimes do it just to check my framing and make sure something that I want to showcase in the background is visible, but I never really worry about the autofocus, and I never actually use manual focus just because the autofocus on this is so reliable. One thing that I really love about this is the no 30-minute record limit. I shoot a lot of podcasts, and I also use this camera to shoot my own podcast, which is called the Creative Caffeine Podcast. In that show, we talk to photographers, videographers, and content creators, talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can listen to it and watch it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just thought I'd do a little cheeky plug there. But when you're recording something like podcasts, you're going to be recording for long periods of time, an hour, sometimes even more. And the fact that I've been recording with this for well over an hour, I've been able to do that with no issues, and also no overheating. Some people have been getting overheating warnings on it, but I've set my overheating to the high setting, or whatever it's called. I don't really know the term, but I've never experienced any overheating. The camera will get warm, but it's never overheated on me. Whereas filming on the A7IV over here, that often overheats, which is not very reliable. So when filming podcasts, I often have to switch that into 1080p to avoid the overheating. Whereas with this, 4K 24, 4K 30 even sometimes, and it never overheats. If you're recording for long periods of time in 4K 60, not really sure why you would be doing that. If you are filming for more than half an hour, even more than 5 minutes in 4K 60, I'd reevaluate your shooting settings. I only shoot in 4K 60 and 4K and 1080p 120 in short bursts, but then I can imagine you'll get overheating, but I've never really ran into that issue with this. Now let's talk about some cons, and I'm going to be honest, there aren't many when it comes to this camera. I have thoroughly enjoyed my shooting experience. I love the new menu system, but there is one or two cons that we need to talk about. It does require quite fast cards to actually use this. You need V90 cards to use the 4K 60 in S&Q mode. Now, I just use it normally and then slow it down in the edit, and it's fine, but you do need pretty fast cards. If you're shooting on anything less than a V60 card, you're going to need something a little bit faster. If you're shooting on V30 cards, it just won't be fast enough to shoot on this camera. I shoot on V60. Eventually, probably in the new year, I'm going to move to V90. Just be aware, those are very expensive cards. I don't have any of the Sony CF Express Type A cards. They are just ridiculously expensive. So I just use these little Lexar cards here, 128 gig. These are V60 cards, 250 megabytes read speed or write speed, and they do the trick. They do the trick. Occasionally I hit the buffer of photos, but that's very rare because I don't really shoot too much burst stuff, as I mainly shoot portrait photos with this. The next con is 4K 60. Now, as great as it is, the fact that you get 422 10-bit is absolutely fantastic, but there is a slight crop. Now, personally, I don't really mind the crop. You could just A, use a wider lens, or 2, just take a couple of steps back and you get the equivalent frame rate of what you were originally going to be at. The 4K 60 crop can be a negative and a con for some people. For me, it's never really been too much of an issue. I'll just whack on a 16 to 35 if need be, but that's just something to be aware of if you're shooting something like real estate and you need the widest possible angle that you can get. This camera's main competitor, which is the Canon R6, that has 4K 60, but it does overheat, but it doesn't have a crop, so just figure out which camera is best for you. And my final con is probably the price. This isn't a cheap camera. It's full frame, it's 33 megapixels, it's great 4K, you get 10-bit. It is about £2,500 here in the UK. So it's not cheap, so you're going to have to save up and set aside a bit of a budget when buying this camera. Places I recommend buying it from are Wex or Camera World, great camera shops here in the UK, or if you're in America, I recommend B&H Photo. I've been there before and it's fantastic. So those are my thoughts on the Sony A7IV. If you've got any questions of things that you'd like me to answer about this specific camera, do drop them in the comments below. This is sort of my 6-month review and I have been loving it. I don't see myself getting rid of this camera anytime soon. In fact, I'm probably gonna save up for another one because I love this, and it's always good to have 2 of the same camera. I'm just gonna have to spend a good amount of time dialing in all my settings again because I've got this sort of pretty dialed in and set up to the way I like to shoot. It's a fantastic camera. Highly recommend it to anybody who's looking to upgrade from their first APS-C camera, or are just looking for a great all-rounder, a good hybrid camera that takes great photos and great video. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it and got some value from it. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.